Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, we knew right away when the spring transfer portal window opened that Kirby Smart, the Georgia Bulldogs, were not playing any games. Immediately we're in contact with some of the best players available in the spring transfer portal window. Well, not only does Georgia land one of those names in Army edge rusher Elo Modozie, we also got to talk about Josh McCray and Josh Horton. This was inside of the same 5-minute span. Georgia lands 3 commitments out of the transfer portal. We got a lot to talk about, especially with a guy like Elo Modozie, who I think the ceiling is astronomically high with it. And what I love most about him, we'll get into it a little bit more, Dill, he's going to provide value immediately in 2025. Georgia had some question marks about how good they were going to be out on the edge. You certainly answered that question mark with a guy like Elo. I just can't help but thinking what 2026 is going to look like for this kid. You're talking about super high upside, really the chance to be one of the best edge rushers that we see in all of college football. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, the Georgia fans, appreciate you guys. Ton of support from the Georgia fans over the last couple of weeks, talking spring ball, talking the portal. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Y'all let it fly in the comment section. Dill, without further ado, let's start with the big name. Elo Modozie, top 50 player in the transfer portal, period. One of the best edge rushers. I know you spent a lot of time watching him. What's he bringing to Georgia's defense?
Real high-end ability to rush the passer on the edge. And that's something we've been talking a lot about, I feel like, with George, is like you have some really young, exciting players, but you don't really have that guy losing Jalen Walker and Michael Williams.
Yeah,
That was a big chunk of the production coming off the edge. Again, is Gabe Harris going to step up and be that guy? You certainly hope so. But you don't really have that proven guy. And you look at the athletic traits and, frankly, the trajectory of Elo Modozie's game at Army. I mean, he's really ascending, if you will. That's what I'm excited about, to see how much better he'll just be this year, just because he is on a really good path. And Georgia, I'm sure, will help expedite that.
That's what fires me up the most about this kid. Dill, I feel like we talk about so many, especially with the COVID over the last couple of years. Like, we talked about so many just middle and college football players, that were going into year 5, year 6. They had been pretty productive over the last couple of years, and they're just middle, and they're not getting much better as players. The complete opposite when it comes to Elo Modozie. Like, a little bit of background, Dill, he was 6'3", 190 coming out of high school in Jacksonville, Florida, goes up to Army and West Point, has a really quiet freshman year, like just clearly did not have the body to play college football yet. And then just explodes onto the scene in the 2024 year for Army. And you look at the trajectory that he's on, and this is what I love about it, is like he's going to be good for Georgia in 2025. Man, what is this kid going to look like in 2026? That's where you start. And Dill, he has that. God, I think some Georgia fans get pissed at me when I do this, but I like the Jalen Walker twitch. I don't mean to be comping him to a guy that's going to be a top 10 draft pick in a couple of days, but you get into some of the stuff at Army. I mean, you're talking about a guy that top of the screen right here. It reminds you of Jalen Walker in terms of the quickness that tackles just really struggle to deal with right here. And he's a guy that, and he's still developing that pass rush toolkit, but this tackle doesn't stand a chance. I mean, I don't even think he gets a hand on him. Running the edge, making the play as a pure pass rusher, Ferrari coming off the edge. Dill, there's just not many. There was nobody in the transfer portal that had the juice that Elo Modozie has coming off the edge.
And again, where he could get so much better is if his play strength just improves. Because you said, I mean, he's got a pretty decent toolkit in my mind in terms of his pass rush, what he can win with, can win inside with quickness, can obviously bend on the edge a little bit, and I think he uses his hands well. The issue is I don't think he's quite strong enough to really dominate the way he should be able to, because he's explosive. You see him get into the offensive lineman, but like doesn't finish necessarily, can't run a really good bull rush, if you will, just because, again, I think the strength still is kind of, it's not where maybe
coming. And look, it's going to have to come if he wants to play for Georgia, because, you got to stop the run on the edge. We saw Kirby Smart not play Damon Wilson all that much this year. We saw Kirby Smart not play Jalen Walker like all that much in the 2023 year, even though he was probably the best pure pass rusher on this football team. If you can't stop the run, you ain't going to play for Georgia. So that's the step you have to see from a guy like Elo. But mean, he's put on 50 pounds in the last 18 months. I ain't got no question mark about him getting on a little bit more, whether it's just a more weight or whether it's just a little bit more play strength. The kid's going to get there. And when he does get there and that light fully turns on, all American caliber edge rush potential. I think we both agree on that.
And
Now,
again, that's where like putting him in like a real football factory like Georgia,
yeah,
I think can
yeah,
do some like
yeah,
real work. Because again, like Army's got a lot of other things kind of going on. Like Georgia football,
yeah,
it's about football, and I think that again, you talk about like maybe helping him even like turbocharge the progression he's already been on, and Army's done a really good job with him because I
yeah.
think he's made huge strides in his college career. But again, Georgia may be a different level in terms of what
Yeah.
they can get out of him.
I mean, this is we had a buddy who went and did athletics at West Point. Like they ain't like full time athletes there. Like they got a lot of other stuff going on. Now he's coming to Athens, Georgia, where it is football 24/7. And what this kid's gonna look like in the next couple of months fires you up. Now, two other transfer portal additions of note. Josh McCray from Illinois, who I freaking loved. Back freshman year, that was 2021, his freshman year at Illinois. Dealt with some injuries over the last couple of years, had a really solid year in 2024. Do I think he's going to be a difference maker for Georgia in the running back room? No, probably not. But this was clearly a position where Georgia wanted to add some veteran depth. And then Josh Horton. Dill, I think this is why we don't get paid the big bucks, I would probably say. I look at Josh Horton, very quiet first 2 years at Miami. I know he dealt with some injuries, never really got any traction. This kid was a 4-star coming out of high school. No doubt Georgia knows him pretty well from his high school days. I don't necessarily see it. Like, I struggle to see Josh Horton becoming a difference maker on the defensive line for Georgia. But if Kirby Smart does, I certainly ain't going to argue with Kirby Smart here.
And we've talked about this. To me, the D tackle spot, as much as it looks like Georgia's pursuing guys, it didn't feel like a pressing need to me.
Yeah.
Because again, you have guys like Kristen Miller, you have McLeod, you have Jordan Hall, who seems like he's ascending.
Yeah.
You have a couple of redshirt freshmen that
Elijah Griffin, I think we have to have in the conversation.
Elijah Griffin, obviously. So again, it didn't feel like to me a super pressing need. And I don't imagine, I'm kind of with you. I don't know that Josh Horton's going to be a super high impact guy, but you did say it. Kirby Smart, like they know who he is. I mean, he was a Georgia high school athlete. So there maybe is something. Again, I don't think you're taking a huge risk. I'm presuming that Josh Horton isn't exactly taking up a ton of the budget, if you will, for what Georgia's doing. So a low risk thing, but probably
we'll
not.
see. And Kirby Smart lives to just build depth, really all over his football program, but specifically on the defensive line. And we said it this morning, like what made those Georgia defensive lines special in 2021 and 2022? Yeah, it was guys like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, but it was also how deep that football team was on the defensive line. Where I'll kind of, sign out here, Dill. Okay, so you got Elo in the bag. Bo Atkinson, what does this mean for him? I don't know. It's clear that Kirby Smart's going to be ultra aggressive in terms of building this defensive line out, this line of scrimmage play. I'm not putting it past Kirby Smart to go out and land Bo Atkinson too. If you do that, Dill, fundamentally changes how I view this Georgia team. There are questions on this roster, and one of them was how elite is Georgia going to be stopping the run and getting after the passer? You have Elo in the boat. You land Bo Atkinson. Those questions fly out the door, and then it's like you're getting into the conversation of this is one of the best pass rush units that you see in the country.
Bo Atkinson probably a little bit more ready to play day one in terms of what Georgia wants to do. A much more physically imposing defense end, I should say. And he does have pass rush ability. He doesn't have the same juice and athleticism that Elo has. Definitely not the same player, but he does it a little more speed to power, a little bit more just getting hands on really long, does a good job of extending tackles and kind of running them into the quarterback's lap a little bit. So a little different flavor, but something I think Georgia, like a Michael Williams, has had a lot of success with. So I do think probably Bo Atkinson maybe a little bit more ability to play and be like an all-down player for Georgia in terms of what they're looking for.
They're different guys. And I mean, that's crazy to say, but it's like Elo reminds you of Jalen Walker a little bit, and Bo Atkinson reminds you of Michael Williams. You're trying to replace him. Just go get some not carbon copies, but some guys with very similar athletic profiles out of the transfer portal. We'll sign out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it on a late Sunday night. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.